We are awakening. We are awakening.
Welcome everyone to Awakening Together's Satsang. Our guest this evening is Dean Sluyter. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Good. And let me introduce Dean to you guys. Dean Sluyter has taught natural methods of meditation and awakening since 1970. His 5 highly acclaimed books include Natural Meditation, which is an Amazon #1 stress management bestseller and Nautilus Gold Medal winner for Best Mind, Body, Spirit book. And I believe this is your latest book, Fearless. Yes.
Yep.
Fearless, 2 words, Fearless, Living Beyond Fear, Anxiety, Anger, and Addiction. Dean gives talks, workshops, and retreats throughout the United States and beyond, from Ivy League colleges to maximum security prisons. His media appearances have included National Public Radio, the New York Times, New York Magazine, Coast to Coast ACIM, The Dr. Oz Show, and the Oprah Magazine. A grateful student of Eastern and Western sages in several traditions, Dean has completed numerous pilgrimages and retreats in India, Tibet, Nepal, and the West. He is known for conveying authentic teachings in forms that are relaxed, accessible, and down to earth. When not writing or teaching, he narrates audiobooks, makes music, and happily tools around town on his Vespa. Dean's website is fearlessbook.net. Okay. We have some music to accompany your introduction there. So, Dean, the way that I normally begin, if it's all right with you, is to have you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, where you see yourself on your journey, if you see it as a journey, and just give us some of that background.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've somehow or other, I stumbled into this stuff very early on. I had some kind of spontaneous experiences, or at least glimpses of awakening in my childhood that sort of made me go, well, what's this all about? And then in my teen years, I was actually my college years, I was lucky enough to find myself in San Francisco, going to San Francisco State College in 1966, which was just an incredible time to be anywhere, but especially to be there. The United States had just relaxed its immigration laws so that some of the great teachers from the East were able to come and take up residence in the United States for the first time. So we had the first full-time Zen center in the United States. Suzuki Roshi was teaching there in San Francisco. Bhaktivedanta Swami started the second Hare Krishna temple in the U.S. The first one was in New York, second one in San Francisco. We had Sufi Sam, we had Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, the great ecstatic Hasidic rabbi. We had just everything going on. I mean, and I was just going around like going down the line in the smorgasbord. I'll have one of these and 2 of these, and just getting a chance to sample all of these things. So it was extremely fortunate. And I also knew early on that I was going to want to teach, that I was going to want to find some form of opening that anyone could do. I mean, in those days, it was being in San Francisco in 1966. That was like being on a very exotic, distant planet. Yeah. But I always had that impulse, okay, I have to find, it's like I've got to find the magic flower here on this planet and bring it back to Earth, bring it back to the suburbs, to mom and dad in some form that they can relate to it. So So really quite early on, I had the sense, okay, I'm looking for what eventually took the form for me of natural meditation. Early on, my first really serious long-term teacher was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who developed what he called transcendental meditation. Okay, simple, natural, effortless. You do it 20 minutes twice a day, and it really worked. You don't have to change your lifestyle. And we're doing all this scientific research to show that this is real in every sense. It's not just some, happy hippie pipe dream or something. And I started teaching through Maharishi, teaching TM, spent months at a time on long retreats with Maharishi in places like Mallorca and Switzerland. And after some years, the TM organization started going in directions that didn't work for me particularly, so I went my separate way and studied with Buddhist teachers, mainly in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, with Advaita Vedanta teachers, with Bhakti Yoga teachers. But what Maharishi had really, the big gift that I got from him was effortlessness. That for lack of a better word, meditation, and I'm not fond of that word meditation. I'm a meditation teacher, but I don't like the word meditation because it's got too many damn syllables. It's this big word, and it sounds like it must be a big task. And the big mistake that people make is to approach meditation as a task. Okay, this is the thing. If I work hard at it, maybe I'll get good at it someday. And of course, that's totally self-defeating because trying to be in a state of letting go, trying to just be, trying to create a non-agitated state, any effort that you make to create a non-agitated state, that itself is a form of agitation.
Right, yeah.
So, I just hear from people over and over, well, I tried to meditate, but it was hard. I tell them, no. You tried to meditate, and so it was hard.
Right, yeah.
So what Maharishi taught me to do was how to not try to, wham, 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 go around trying to flatten out all the waves on the surface of the ocean of mind, but rather allow yourself to sink 1 or 2 feet below the surface. The water's silent. No one has to make it silent. It's silent right now.
Wow.
The silent awareness that underlies all of our thinking and perceiving and emotions and so forth. We don't have to deal with those. We don't have to try to suppress them. No one can do that. The Buddha couldn't do that. When the Buddha, it's a famous story, when the Buddha attained his awakening, he didn't say, how wonderful, I finally stopped all those damn thoughts. He said, how wonderful, everything's fine just as it is.
Yes.
The thoughts, the construction going on across the street, whatever, it's all, I've found the silent beingness that's always there in the face of all of that. So I first got that from Maharishi, and then when I had to move on from his organization, I confirmed that by finding pretty much the same convergent teaching from Buddhist teachers and Advaita teachers. And so I teach these days without any particular label. I just call it natural meditation. And in my new book in particular, Fear Less, I've taken the direction of, okay, it's great to sit down doesn't have to be real long, 10, 15 minutes or something every day, sinking into this natural meditation. But also, here's a lot of things that you can do, other little tools to have in your toolbox. Like one that was picked up on the Oprah website. It's running on the Oprah website right now. Breathe through your feet. So simple. Just, okay, you're aware. As soon as I say soles of your feet, you're aware of that, right?
Right.
No effort involved there.
Right.
And as soon as I say you're breathing, oh yeah, I'm already breathing. There's no effort involved there. Right. Now we just put those two things together. So just imagine as you breathe in, you're breathing in through the soles of your feet. As you breathe out, breathing out through the soles of your feet. At your own pace, not trying to concentrate, not trying to push anything away. Eyes can be closed or open, doesn't matter. Just breathing in through the soles of the feet, breathing out through the soles. That's it, done. Now you and people watching this, I mean, you notice that things are kind of just got mellowed out there,
Yes.
right? It's so, and I love this because I can share this with someone in 30 seconds. I don't have to use this big word that is so scary to some people, meditation.
Right.
And, you can, next time you're sitting there at the red light, trying to make it turn green faster, which hasn't worked yet, probably never will, but you can keep trying, or you can, oh, great, I'll sit back, breathe through my feet for half a minute while I'm waiting for the light to change.
Yeah. And we've been looking in our group at the idea of allowance, really letting things be as they are. I mean, not like you have any choice, but learning that allowance. And this sounds a lot like that. And I certainly feel that when you talk about breathing through the soles of your feet, which is genius, by the way. So I have not had the opportunity to read your books, but they're now on my list. My question is, it sounds like what you just told us is that you have moved from just the meditation experience, to making this travel through into your life, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The whole idea always has been integration.
Right.
The whole idea of meditation is you go inside, you find that silent ocean of awareness that underlies all the waves of experience in time and space and in the outer world, and then you come out, you go in, you come out, more and more they get integrated. Eventually, you realize that, well, the waves are never really separate from the ocean. So that even as you're fully participating in life, fighting your battles, doing everything you need to do, you're anchored in that silence. You're in that expansiveness, that boundless okayness is there. That thread is running through your life all the time. And this is what's called awakening, realization, enlightenment, whatever inadequate word you want to use. But yes, more and more my emphasis is, in addition to that, let's have some more tools in the toolbox so that we can, actually something Maharshi said once that always stuck with me. He said, when you need change for the parking meter, a quarter is more valuable than $100 bill.
That's right.
So when you're dealing with a particular situation, when you're getting up to the microphone, you've got to give your talk, and you hate public speaking, and the room is spinning, and your mouth is dry, you don't want to hear about supreme enlightenment and meditation and all that. It's like, give me something, give me some quick fix, something I can do right now. And what you can do is breathe through your feet, for example. And I go through about 1 or 2 dozen other little tools like that throughout the book. Another one which I love, and I get a lot of good feedback from people on this one, is singing descending fifths. Okay? Sounds complicated, it's very simple. Oh, say, can you see? Right? Everyone knows that. Now we just take the opening notes. That's called a descending fifth for reasons we don't have to worry about. And if you don't like the Star-Spangled Banner, if you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, I wish I was in the right. Ironically, the two sides that were killing each other both started their songs with those same 2 notes.
Wow.
And that's because this is the fifth, which is found in every scale, every form of music. It's the only interval, the only set of 2 notes that's found in every form of music, every scale, Eastern, Western, African, everything, because it's something fundamental. Is as far away as you can get from without starting to get closer to the next up in the next octave. So the fifth, that's the maximum state of suspense, and then is letting go, right? You may know this from church. Amen.
Yes.
Right? So this is a good thing to practice in the shower. I do this every morning in the shower. So you see, you're just marinating in that low note, which also is very good for strengthening the voice. Very important for women. They talk about women's voices being heard in the workplace and in relationships. Part of the reason that women's voices tend to be ignored is they can sound literally, physically squeaky and high. By this exercise actually strengthens the overtones, the low overtones of your voice, so you sound less mouse-like, more lion-like.
I like that.
And it's another one you can do, when you've got to get up to the mic, when you're on the freeway and someone cuts you off and you're about to go into your fit of road rage, or your whatever the substance is that you have addictive cravings for. Oh, there's that cigarette, I really want it. Or, oh, my friend is offering to pour me a drink, and I know if I have that drink, I'm going to go over the rails again and, mess up my life again. So you can be going, or you can go,
when you do that, I feel the relaxation
Yeah.
when you do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've got to try
yeah.
it for myself. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's really great. And when you try it for yourself, I'm kind of a baritone, so I'm doing it fairly low. I mean, I would do it. But what you do is find the lowest for the second note, the lowest note that you can do at full volume. And so if you're a tenor or a soprano, it might be whatever fits your voice.
Right. I'll try that at some point. I don't think I'll do it now for this program.
No, right. And actually, on my website, I've got some audio tracks for various kinds of practice, and I've got one where I lead people through that exercise, then in more detail. Then we do it with different vowel sounds, which help bring out different qualities of the voice and different qualities of consciousness. So people can check that out.
Very cool. And that's on, again, your website.
Yeah, Fearless Book. It's okay, I know it. It's fearlessbook.net.
Great. You talk about, first of all, I appreciate you talking about that in relation to addiction, because I am currently smoking again and would like to give that up again. Mm-hmm. So thank you. But you talk about.
By the way, America's #1 killer drug, tobacco, kills 10 times as many people as opioids. Just saying.
I'm sure I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Okay.
We talk about quick fixes and things that are useful in everyday life. But I wonder really where this fits into the idea that you've mentioned of enlightenment or awakening, or as I mentioned, a journey towards those things. And I just I just wonder if you could speak to that.
Mm-hmm. It's all converging on that. It's all, a great an American Zen master once said, enlightenment is an accident. All our spiritual practice, our meditative practice, just makes us more accident prone. Okay? So there's nothing we can do to bring about awakening. That was expressed very beautifully in the Gospels, where it says that the day of the Lord comes like a thief in the night. No man knows the day and the hour of his coming. Right? It comes like a thief in the night. It sneaks up on you when you're not expecting it. I was just leading our Tuesday evening meditation session here in Santa Monica, which, by the way, I've just started live streaming it on YouTube. It's every other Tuesday night, and people can get there through my website, and so they can participate in that live in real time. And I was pointing out to people that sometimes you're sitting there in the meditation and you're thinking, I'm wasting my time. Nothing's going on. I'm just sitting here thinking thoughts, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, when the bell rings and it's time to open your eyes, you're going, oh, man, I don't want to open my eyes. All right? And it's because in this kind of meditation, this natural meditation where we're not trying to concentrate or control the mind or push the thoughts away, we're just allowing, not pushing anything, just allowing ourselves to be pulled, allowing the gravity to pull us down into that silent ocean of awareness. It sneaks up on us like a thief in the night. It happens so naturally and organically and kind of incrementally that we often don't realize it's happening until it's time to come out and later. Or sometimes, the phone rings in the middle of your meditation and the cat jumps in your lap and you go, whoa, where's that? Or people come out, here's another one, happens to me all the time when I'm leading my workshops in various parts of the country. I'll lead the first meditation and someone raises their hand. And I always know when this question's coming, I can tell by the look on their face, they go, how long was that? Because I have no sense of the time.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And I don't tell them how long it was, because whatever I say, whether I say 5 minutes or 30 minutes, it'll be misleading, because then they'll just say, oh, because that'll be distracting from the significant experience, which is that once you start sinking into that ocean, there's no time there. Time is only up on the surface. Time is only where the thinking mind is, and space also, by the way. So not only do people open their eyes and go, boy, how long was that? I have no idea. Often there's kind of this funny sense of, oh, am I back here in this room? Am I back here in this body? That's kind of odd. Because where I was boundlessness. Not a body, not a room, not just pure awareness itself, like open space. And all our experiences, everything that we experience is made up of hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking, emoting, including the experience of the body. We look down at the body and we go, and, I'm seeing a thing, I'm feeling a thing, right? And not the same one I saw 5 years ago or 15 years ago, but it's the same I, the same silent awareness, which is not a body, that looks down and sees the body. So what there is this boundless awareness, this just like open space, only it's aware open space, and it's us, the one that is aware, and all this stuff coming and going within it. Thoughts come and go, emotions come and go, bodies come and go, and more and more that it becomes clear to us that what we're looking for in all that stuff that comes and goes, we're looking for something stable, and we're looking for something that makes us happy, and that we can rely on. But everything's moving all the time. We keep chasing the shiny objects; they keep moving all the time, and so. I thought I could rely on this thing. Here's my favorite diner. They make that sandwich just the way I want it, and then they close, or they get a new chef, and then right? I got involved with this person romantically, or I married her or married him, so that I just want them to stay just the way they are. And oh, wait a minute, now they're changing. Of course, I'm not changing. Ha 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 ha. And we keep trying to get all our ducks in a row, get everything lined up in such a way that it's going to yield us a sense of security and this sense of happiness. And we keep getting these cues from the outside that, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And that's the bad news. The good news is that security and that happiness that we were looking for everywhere else was right here in the one who was looking all the time. And again, that's, all the great sages talk about that in different languages. The Buddha says, outside is samsara, cyclic existence, stuff keeps going round and round. Inside is nirvana, which literally means blown away. All that is just blown away, like open space. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. and seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then all else shall be added unto you. Right? That the more and more you get rooted in that, all this other stuff works out pretty well. More and more your mind becomes clear, so you come out of meditation to deal with situations, and you don't have to, one of my favorite aspects of the way it is to be me now with, 50 years of meditation under my belt, as opposed to, how I was some years ago, is that I do a lot less thinking. I mean, thoughts are still there. I mean, I have a lot of fun thinking. But I know they're for, it's like when you see on those websites, for entertainment purposes only. Fine, I think thoughts, I write books, we have fun conversations. But as far as the thoughts about, what should I do about this situation? How should I handle this thing with her and with him? There's very little thinking anymore. There's more just seeing. Oh yeah, you see what to do. It's obvious.
And you're talking about that as kind of as a byproduct of the natural meditation.
Right. Yeah, you're not trying to do it. So practicing the natural meditation and practicing, some of these other tools that we can put in the toolbox, like breathing through your feet, singing descending fifths, and I got a bunch of them are matters of what's called view, and I'm using the word view not in the sense of a concept or an opinion, but in the sense actually in my Buddhist teachers use the word view like this, meaning perspective. Mm-hmm. Perspective. For example, and there's a chapter, by the way, here's what the book looks like, folks. Pretty, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I was very, the most dreaded words in the English language for an author are, here's your book cover. Because you work for a couple of years on the book, getting everything right, and you have generally no control over the cover, and half the time they show you the cover and you go, oh, no. But this time I thought, that's beautiful.
It is
I really
lovely,
like it.
Yes.
So one of the chapters is titled, Would It Help? And I took that, or I stole that, from a 2015 Steven Spielberg film called Bridge of Spies, which is the true story of Rudolf Abel, who was a Soviet spy who was captured in New York City by the American authorities in the 1950s, and he was put on trial for espionage. And his lawyer comes to talk to him for the first time and explains to him, and fortunately his lawyer is Tom Hanks, so, how bad can things be?
Right.
And the lawyer explains to him, you're a very inconvenient person. The Americans and the Russians, everyone wants to see you go to the electric chair. And he listens to that for a moment, and he says, all right. The lawyer says, you don't seem worried. He says, would it help? So there's your mantra, right?
Right.
There's your view, your shift of perspective. Would it help? I mean, just think back, like kind of vaguely cast your gaze back over your whole life from age 0 up to right now. And anyone listening to this, if you can do this right now, just get a sense of, there's your whole life right up to this moment. What if you had done everything exactly the same? Gone the same places, meet the same people, have the same experiences. You did everything exactly the same, except without the worrying. What would did it help? A lot of people feel, well, if I'm not worrying, I'm not being conscientious. I'm being apathetic. I'm being passive. I'm not engaging. And that is just wrong. It doesn't work that way. Worrying doesn't make you more effective. It makes you less effective because it's like rippling the surface of the lake. You don't get clear reflections. You don't see clearly, okay, well, what can I actually do to help matters out? In fact, worrying can become a kind of a cheap alternative. It makes us to effective action, makes us feel like we're taking action. And, maybe I'll, write some angry, whatever the thing is I'm worrying about, and I'll write all about it on Facebook and, but what are you accomplishing? Now, on the other hand, this doesn't mean when the sensations of worry come along to try to suppress them. Oh, it's not enlightened for me to feel worry. Suppress means press down, and when we press things down, we press them down into the body somewhere, and work on your ulcer or your back pain or something. It'll go somewhere in the body usually. But what it means is, okay, recognize that the feeling is there, but recognize that you don't have to do that. There is a switch, and you've chosen to worry. And just because it's a habit doesn't mean you can't cultivate a new habit. And of just, okay, I'm not going to do that right now. There's a wonderful way that this was put by Shantideva, a 6th century Buddhist sage. He said, if there's a solution to the problem, what's the point of worrying? If there's no solution to the problem, what's the point of worrying?
Right, yeah. Pardon me, my smoker's cough.
More water.
Yeah. Let me do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've personally been experiencing not needing things to be any different than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's become kind of a mantra for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had some experience of what you were talking about. Things just kind of flow.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I need to go take a specific action, and if there's an action to be taken, it's obvious, it presents itself. But,
yeah. It becomes, it's kind of like when you watch great basketball players, when you watch, Stephen Curry or LeBron James, and, when they're rushing the net, and there's, 5 guys all defending the net. And it's so beautiful to see that, it's happening too fast. What's great about that is, in that case, it's happening too fast for them to think about. They can't think, okay, that guy's going to go right. That guy is, his left is his weak side. This guy is, has this much elevation. You can't think about all that. You just see it and you know it. And a nanosecond before it happens, you see the path that's going to open up between you and the basket. And it's just delicious. And we respond to that. We just go, we have this wave of aesthetic bliss when we see basketball being played at that level, or anything music being played, paintings being made, anything being done at that level. It's just beautiful to watch, because that's a model of how we intuitively know our lives should be lived. That we should be passing through that opening all the time. I'm convinced that in the story of the Red Sea opening for Moses, that's a metaphor for that same thing. That's an experience that we all have as we become more awake.
Lovely. And I'm reminded of the that theme from Bagger Vance.
Mm.
Bobby Jones seeing the field, and yeah. And I did want to talk to you about movies, because I know you have a book on movies. What's the name of that book? That
book is titled Cinema Nirvana, Enlightenment Lessons from the Movies. See if I have a... No, I don't see a copy of it here. But this one, it's the only book, I'm pretty sure it's the only book around that on the cover, there's a picture of a golden Buddha clutching a box of popcorn.
I'm sure it's the only one.
Yeah.
That's great.
And by the way, if on my website, fearlessbook.net, you can read chapters from all of my books. On my web, I've got a chapter there from Cinema Nirvana on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And by the way, when I was writing that book, and I told people, okay, I'm writing a book about enlightenment lessons from the movies, and they all said, oh yeah, you got to write about the Legend of Bagger Vance, and you got to write about the Matrix and so forth. And so I made a list of those and made it a point not to write about any of those.
I love that.
because if everyone else was already seeing the spirituality in those movies, that's no fun. There's nothing for me to do there. So I wrote about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Jaws, Casablanca, The Godfather, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, all these things where you're sure there could never be enlightenment content. But the thing is, if awakening or God or the infinite, nirvana, whatever we want to call it, if it's what it's supposed to be, if it's in infinity, then it has to be everywhere, by definition. You know, if I say, okay, the infinite is everywhere, pervades the whole universe except for this one point at the end of my glasses, then it's not infinity.
Right.
Then there's a limit on it. So it's got to be everywhere. It's like in the Zen tradition. There's all these stories where a monk will go to a roshi, a master, and he'll say, you know, what is the essence, or what is the Buddha? Meaning not who was the Buddha, that guy, but what is the Buddha? The word Buddha really means awakening. In other words, what is the enlightened reality? What's the deal? And sometimes the roshi will answer, oh, the Buddha is the beautiful sunset. The Buddha is the golden temple. The Buddha is the wild geese disappearing over the horizon on an autumn afternoon. You know, something beautiful, poetic. But I like the ones where the roshi says, the Buddha is a pile of cow shit in the middle of the road. Right? Because that's also true, but to me that's more significantly true. Because if you can see it there, you see it everywhere.
Yeah. We do a movie group once a month. We watch it offline and then get online together to discuss it. And I'm curious if you have advice for folks who want to see the Enlightenment themes in movies. What would you suggest?
What would I suggest they do? Well, reading my book. I hate to sound like I'm selling books,
no.
but read my book because, you know, well, I'll tell you, the way my preparation for reading that book for writing that book, and I didn't know at the time that this was my preparation. When I traveled through Tibet with my teacher, I have a wonderful Buddhist teacher named Charles Genoux. He's Swiss, actually. His first language is French, but he speaks pretty good English and he speaks fluent Tibetan, and he is an expert on all the Tibetan temple art. And the temple art is not just there for decoration, every little detail. So we would go through these temples and he would point out, okay, you see in this painting, this lama is wearing a purple undershirt and this one's wearing a red undershirt. And that's bringing out this aspect of awakened awareness versus this aspect, you know, that kind of thing. Those fine details of what's called the iconography. So when I started writing this book, I said, okay, that's how I'm going to approach American movies. So if you go on my website and you read the chapter on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
it was fabulous. But go ahead.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Yeah.
So one of my big discoveries there was that, okay, because Charles, my teacher, had taught me to pay close attention to details, I noticed the colors of the Seven Dwarfs' eyes. That 5 of them have brown eyes, but Grumpy has just little black dots. And because, you know, he has no pupils, nothing to dilate. In other words, he can't let the light in. That's what happens when you're grumpy. The light is there, but you're too tight. You're not letting it in. And the 7th dwarf is Dopey, the only one without a beard, and he's got baby blues. Because Dopey is the divine fool. Dopey is, you know, in Zen, they say the Zen mind, the enlightened mind, is the beginner's mind. Jesus says to enter into the kingdom of heaven, which is within you, be like a little child. Don't go in, okay, now I'm an expert meditator, I got this covered, I got this wired. That way, that's death. But, you know, the real attitude is, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. You're just innocent, no preconceptions, just whatever you got, throw it into the fire. And that's why when the dwarfs first come home and they realize, oh, there's someone in their cottage, which turns out to be Snow White. See, we say, oh, I'm happy. I'm grumpy. I'm bashful. Right? We identify with these limited things, with our moods, with our mind states. We identify with them. We say, I am that. Even though they keep changing. I'm hungry. Then, you know, an hour later, I'm satisfied. And actually Spanish is a little more accurate. They don't say, I am hungry. They say, yo tengo hambre, I have hunger.
Yes. That's
more accurate. So when the dwarfs come home, for the first time they realize, oh, there's someone in our cottage, and we've got to send someone who will go upstairs and find out who's sleeping in our beds upstairs. And of course they send Dopey, because that is the way you have to make contact with what you really are, which is not happy, not grumpy, not dopey, but pure, empty awareness, like the, Snow White, the untrammeled virgin white snow. So it's that innocence, that's the dopey that has to tiptoe up the stairs.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's what that book is like. I had so much fun writing that one.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that as well, and possibly doing those movies during our movie group. So
great.
That's lovely. Thank you. So I've asked you this question a couple times, and I don't know if it's you or me.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let me just ask you: Is there such a thing as enlightenment?
Yeah, it's not a thing, but yes.
Okay.
It's not a thing. It's not a state. It's all there is. It's all there is. But we somehow we keep walking around not noticing it until we do.
Okay.
Until by accident we stumble into it, and hopefully with the help of some of these practices we become more accident prone. But every case, every time someone wakes up, there's a what I call the forehead slapping moment. It's and I mentioned earlier, the Buddha is the most famous example. Sitting, 49 days under the tree, and just trying. Okay, how am I going to conquer suffering? How am I going to conquer my mind? How am I going to get to the ultimate final nirvana? And what finally happened was that he gave up. He said, he let things alone, and then it happened. And then he said, and it's such a beautiful story because it was just before sunrise. It was in the time before sunrise, and he looked over at the eastern sky where beautiful Venus, the morning star, was rising ahead of the sun. And he gazed at Venus, and he said, how wonderful, everything is perfectly enlightened just as it is. Right? Now we're walking around saying, well, I'm not enlightened just as I am. I'm suffering. But who do you think's more of an expert on this thing, you or the Buddha?
Well.
And what happens is that everyone who, when they wake up to it, they go, oh yeah, I was looking for something else. I was looking for, either consciously or in some subtle way, I was expecting enlightenment to be an experience. It was going to be, a 24-hour psychedelic orgasm, or it was going to be, purple flames shooting out of my crown chakra, or something like that. It was going to be something exotic. It was going to be some experience, some phenomenon, some ultimate phenomenon. I know I thought about it that way for years. And then what happens is gradually, in a few cases suddenly, but most cases it's actually, there's a great line in a book of Hemingway's where one character asks the other, how did you go bankrupt? And he said, 2 ways. First gradually, then suddenly. Okay? So the awakening is, for most people, it's kind of the same thing. It's gradually and then suddenly. And what happens is you realize I was looking for something else, and it was right here in things as they are. That this boundless okayness, everything is exactly the way it was before, except that in a way that I can't describe, but is the most obvious thing in the world to me, everything is boundlessly okay, just as it is. The colors are the same. The people come and go. You still have to deal with situations. It doesn't mean you become apathetic. You're not sitting there like a, drooling vegetable, and your disciples come and, change your diaper for you once a day. It's not like that. In fact, it's the opposite, because now the okayness, boundless okayness, is assured for you. Your happiness is taken care of. Then you're free to completely engage in life, not worrying about whether it's going to turn out in a happy way for you, because the happy way is every moment for you. And then you can really start to dedicate yourself to others in a natural way, not because I'm being noble or being a martyr, but just because, it's like the sun. You become more and more, you're like the sun shining. The sun shines on the lake, the sun shines on the ocean, the sun shines in your cup of tea equally, and the sun doesn't go, okay, now I'm going to shine on the lake. The sun is just being the sun the way it is. And you've known people like that, haven't you? That just being around them is kind of, I think I'll just sit back and get a suntan here.
Well, I'm kind of getting that feeling from you, Dean.
Okay, good. Well, God knows I try.
Actually, I want to talk about what that seemed to touch on, and you said you knew early on that you wanted to teach.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about your motivation for teaching, and I'd like to contrast that. I was listening to you and Rick Archer, by the way, and you're both brilliant. He's great. He's great. Who said what? And,
oh, man, yeah.
And I paraphrase everything and don't know who said it. But somebody said that the greatest service that you can do is to awaken to yourself. And so it really does make me curious about your motivation to teach. And in contrast with, and I don't know if you consider yourself awake, and I don't need you to answer that question unless you want to, and just how those things kind of coexist.
Yeah, I don't think I have any motivation for teaching. It's just my nature. It's just what I'm wired to do. Some people are wired from, an early age. You can see, this kid's a great soccer player. It's very, we're born with certain tendencies, kind of certain temperamental, constitutional tendencies, just our chemistry. My mother told me that I was a late talker, but that once I started, I never shut up. And I can remember, actually, when I was about maybe 7 years old, and I guess I was just yakking all the time and not even realizing that all the words in my head were coming out my mouth, But evidently, I never stopped. And so my dad sat me down. I remember this so clearly. My dad sat me down and explained. He said, Dean, if you just talk all the time, you don't get to learn new things. It might be good to listen sometimes. And that just seemed so brilliant. So, it was such wow, breaking news, that I jumped on my bike. And just started riding around the neighborhood. And in those days, kids were allowed to do that. We went everywhere without adults. We were all free-range kids. And I rode around the neighborhood, and there I saw a kid about my age walking with his little sister. I didn't know these kids. They were strangers. And I pulled over, jumped off my bike, and explained to them.
That's great.
I yacked to them about why you shouldn't just be yakking all the time. So I think my fate was sealed, that I was going to be a person who was going to talk about the silence.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I have heard you talk about, I've listened to several of your interviews, but I have heard you talk about...
you know what? Let me
yes,
inject
sir,
one more thing on that topic before
Sure.
I forget, which is that because, some people have to teach just because that, as I started to say, that's their chemistry. Other people, there may be other people who are just as awakened or much more clearly awakened that don't happen to have the teaching gene and will never sit down and teach. And that has nothing to do with the degree of wakefulness, you know? So it's a separate thing.
Okay.
I mean, and then there are some people, like one thing that, and I know there's a lot of people in this field that I'm pretty sure are way more awake than I am. You know, if you've been around the Dalai Lama, you know, talk about getting a suntan. Oh my Lord. But you know what? Have you ever read any of his books?
No.
Yeah. Well, I've tried several times. I've never been able to get through them. They're really boring. I mean, that's been my experience. And one thing that I know, I'm a good writer. And this is the thing that I love, that, you know, hearing from people that, oh, gee, your writing is really engaging and it's funny and you make things clear and accessible. And a lot of that is because I've been so fortunate that I've had all these opportunities to teach. I taught high school for many years. I've worked with prisoners in maximum security. I've worked in, you know, people in the film industry. So I've been able to find out how can I convey this stuff in really clear terms to you know, all kinds of people. And the other thing is I was always, you know, a good writer even when I was a young kid. So, you know, it's just fun to be growing into more and more clarity of awakening. And, you know, my answer to your other question before, are you awake? I'd say I'm awakening. I'm awakening. You know, am I at 100%? No. But I'm having a lot more fun than before I started on this thing, you know. So I'm somewhere between 1 and 99. I don't know. And as I grow more into that, to be able to just, you know, have that kind of, you know, coupled with the one or maybe two skills that I happen to have, which are writing and speaking, and to be able to convey it in a way that kind of, you know, lights up some lights for people. It's fun.
Yeah, that's
you know. Otherwise, I get up in the morning and, you know, I got to do something.
Well, you do this well. Keep it up.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. But I did want to talk to you. You and Rick had a conversation about, you know, getting into the metaphysical concepts as opposed to, you know, the practicalities of this.
Right.
And you talked about, you know, there are people out there suffering. So yeah. I wanted to ask you what you think causes suffering.
Misapprehension of the situation. Okay. I mean, the key teaching of the Buddha is that we generate our own suffering. That's the Four Noble Truths. Right. We generate our own suffering, and that's great news. Because if our suffering was coming from the universe, from the outer reality, that would mean we're screwed.
Right.
Because we can't control the universe. But we can control what we do. Now, I'll give you a very simple example. On Monday, Mommy goes to little Jimmy and says, little Jimmy, on Friday, you got your checkup with the doctor. And little Jimmy says, oh, is the doctor going to give me a shot? She says, oh, yeah, you're due for a shot. Oh, no, is it going to be in my arm or is it going to be in my hiney? So I don't know, little Jimmy. Oh, it could be my arm, it could be my hiney. And now he's got from Monday to Friday to generate suffering for himself. He's not feeling any pain, but he's experiencing suffering. And there's a saying you've probably heard, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. Okay? So finally now, it's Friday, he goes to the doctor, he's had the luxury of suffering all week, and now when he actually gets the shot, how long does that last? 2 seconds or something. And then he goes back, and on Monday he's on the playground telling all the other little kids how horrible it is. So, share the wealth, they can start suffering. And in fact, even at the moment that he's getting the shot, what percentage of the total, volume of your body is having pain inflicted on it? right? Maybe 1/100th of 1%, 1,000th of 1%. And yet, what do we do when we get the shot? We go like this. It's like, people say, oh, I can't concentrate. This is an incredible act of concentration. You're concentrating. I mean, it's a perverse concentration. You're concentrating all your attention in the one spot where the pain is and ignoring all the other parts that are fine. That's called creating your own suffering. And the cure is, first of all, notice that you're doing it. And start noticing in different situations how you're doing it. And once you start noticing that you're doing it, then you can stop. We were talking before about letting go. A great teacher, I've had the incredible fortune to spend time around Mooji. If you're familiar with Mooji, the great Jamaican Advaita master. And someone, he was talking about, he said, yeah, he was talking about just let it go. And someone said, how do you let it go? And he said, how do you let go of a hot potato? Right? Everyone knows. Everyone knows. And so one of the chapters in this book is called Drop Your Thoughts, because one of the main ways that people, of course, generate suffering is with all their thoughts. Oh, dig it, and this and that. And so, the technique is just you slap your hands in front of your eyes or something just to kind of shock yourself. And for 5 seconds, drop it all. Drop it all. After 6 seconds, pick it up again. But for 5 seconds, you've poked a hole in it. And you've shown yourself, you're starting to show yourself and show your neural pathways that you don't have to do that in a continuous stream. And in fact, you don't do it in a continuous stream. When people say, oh, I've been carrying on this burden, this trauma from this thing that happened in my childhood or from my romantic breakup. Oh my God, I'm just, dragging this along through my life all the time. So here's my question. Where is that when you're in the state of dreamless sleep? When you're fast asleep? You drop in it for 8 hours. Then you get up in the morning, you pick it up again. Now, what about the other 16 hours? Okay, all your stress, all your trauma about your heartbreak or whatever it was, where is that when you're parallel parking in a tight spot?
Not there.
No, it's not there, because you can't think two things at the same time. So at that point, you've dropped it. Where is it when you sneeze? You've dropped it. Where is it when you have an orgasm? You dropped it. Where is it when you're really involved in a movie? You lose yourself in the movie. You're too busy empathizing with, Meryl Streep suffering or whoever it is on the screen to feel your own. That's why they turn the lights down. It's to make the screen more brilliant and to make your body disappear. So you can stop identifying as you and identify as Meryl. Right? So we're all experts at dropping these traumas. We do it hundreds of, you drop your trauma 1,000 times a day, but then you pick it up 1,001 times. So just, maybe the next time don't pick it up or drop it again. That's called coming out of suffering. Yeah, and then also the meditation, because in meditation when we're just resting as empty open awareness, resting as that silent ocean of awareness underneath all these waves of thinking and experiencing, then that's a really pure, really clear, powerful place of being of everything being dropped, but being wide awake in that, and not having to be distracted by the movie or the parallel parking, just wide awake, completely there, completely present, but with everything transcended. And then that really carries over into day-to-day life.
Yeah. So I've heard you talk a couple times about the TM guy.
Maharshi,
Yes.
Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, yes.
Yes, talking about meditating for 20 minutes a day or twice a day for 20 minutes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious how long you recommend one meditate. How do you integrate that practice into your daily life?
Yeah. My recommendation is meditate for a while. And if you're in a hurry, meditate for a little while. No, seriously. And this was one of the great liberations for me when I moved on from the TM organization, because Maharshi would be okay, you meditate for 20 minutes. You meditate for 17 minutes. And as a teacher, I was very good. We all were very good about, teaching exactly the way Maharshi was instructing us to teach. And there's a certain virtue to that as far as it goes. But what I discovered in my own practice and in the people that I teach now, it's much more liberating to say, forget about the time. Because I have so many people that come, when I travel around the country giving workshops, people who come up to me and say, okay, I've got it up to 35 minutes a day. I'm working on 40. And I go, oh, no, right? Yeah, the key word there is working. Right. Much better. It's much more valuable to just let go and be for, 5 minutes or 1 minute than to be grinding away at it for 35 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating there. I'm not exaggerating that. So my recommendation is throw the timepiece out of your meditation space. How long do you walk on the beach? How long do you put on the headphones and listen to your favorite tunes? How long do you gaze into the eyes of the one you love? What all those experiences have in common is you lose yourself in them and there is no time. That's the way to approach meditation. Just lose yourself in it. Don't worry about the time. Don't worry about anything. Like Bob Marley says, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing going to be all right. That's the title of my chapter on meditation in this book, Every Little Thing. Oh, don't worry. Lovely. It's all going to be all right. It all is all right.
Lovely. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about was the nature of the world, non-duality. I heard you talk about Rupert Spira, and we've been, or Spira, however you say the fellow's name.
Spira.
Oh, thank you.
Like spiral, but without the L.
Okay, good. And we've been looking as a group at Rupert Spira and this idea that there's no boundary between the experiencer and the experience. So I just wondered if you could just comment on that.
Yeah, I just love Rupert as a teacher. He is so clear, and I've had the good fortune of being on a number of retreats with Rupert, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of anyone that just lays it out clearer than Rupert does. He's really just tremendous. I mean, reading his stuff, it's almost like reading proofs in algebra, or geometry or something. It's just going along in that very clinical way. The thing is, and notice the language that you use, the idea that there's no separation between the experiencer and the experience or the object of experience. Usually we think of there being three things, right? I taste the water, right? Experiencer, some act of experiencing, and some object that's experienced. So the way that you phrase it, the idea of non-duality between us, non-separateness, you know what I'm going to say here, I can tell. And of course, it's not an idea. It's not an idea. It's, well, I don't even want to say an experience, but it's reality. Which is experienceable. It's well. What I'm getting at is this: in Rupert's teaching and in his books, he walks you through exercises, the same kinds of exercises that Francis, his teacher, walked him through, and that I've been fortunate enough to work in person with Rupert and have him walk me through to notice that the apparent separation between experiencer and experience that we've been in the habit of thinking that is just a mental habit, is just a concept. That if we really pay attention to our actual experience, that apparent separation breaks down. And in fact, in Fearless, in the last chapter of this book, that's where I go to. The last chapter is it's called, Love is All Around. You know that song?
Yes.
It was a big hit by the Trogs in 1968, and then later a cover version of it. It's in all those Hugh Grant romantic comedies. You know, I'm going to let that plane go by.
Sure.
I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes. Love is all around me, and so the feeling grows. All right, so I take that and do the Rupert style, Francis style exercise of, okay, put your fingers on a thing or put your toes on a thing, and then step by step we start paying attention to what our experience is. I'm not going to try to walk us through it right now because you really kind of need to get quiet with yourself. But take that chapter of my book or take Rupert's books and it walks you through it and just really examine the experience of it. Don't try to debate it as an idea because you'll just go back and forth forever on it. It's not an idea. You either get it experientially or you don't. Or you get it experientially or you haven't gotten it yet.
That's good news.
Yeah. No, it is. It is because something that's unreal, any perception that's unreal is by nature unstable. It's precarious. It takes work to maintain an illusion. It takes work to experience, to maintain a misconception. Right. And whereas reality is just there by itself. It doesn't need anyone to prop it up. And we've been working hard. And again, this is really the deep reason why meditation has to be effortless. Again, we can go to Rupert. Rupert says it beautifully. He says people think that meditation, that the separate self is what you are, and then meditation is a thing that you do. Actually, meditation is what you are, and generating this whole concept of a separate self is the thing that you do.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. I think that's just brilliant. So if the reality is non-duality, that there isn't, we think that, there's a world of object, and one of those objects is me, trying to make my way through this world of objects, trying to avoid the pain, trying to find my way to the pleasure. I do that for a little while, and then, bang, game over. This object is dead, no replays. That's the model of life that most people live, including a lot of people who consider themselves religious. I find it interesting that some of the most devout church-going people, boy, when the body starts breaking down, they'll march their poor, exhausted body through every medical intervention possible. Not in all cases, but I've noticed that in a lot of cases. So most people, in their heart of hearts, no matter what they, say on Sunday morning, most people in their heart of hearts think that they're a thing, and when this thing is ceases to function, that's it. Whereas if there isn't a world of a bunch of things, there's just boundless awareness, and you are it, as it says in the old Hindu scriptures, tat tvamasi, that thou art. Tag, you're it. And not just again, it's not an idea, but it's as directly experienced as, you're experiencing looking at your computer screen with my little image on it. Then you don't worry a lot about death or anything else. And we know that. We know, what's wonderful is we have examples of people. Even if you've never met Jesus or the Buddha or Socrates or Lao Tzu or Shankara or Anandamayi Ma or, any of these great awakened sages, just thinking of them, just think of Socrates, just think of the Buddha, right? And don't you sense somehow, even if I've never read a single word of the Buddha's teaching, I can get some sense of the place that he's coming from, which is a place where you don't worry about dying or much of anything else. You somehow know intuitively that it's all this one thing and it's all fine.
Looks like we've got a little over 15 minutes or so left. So I've been asking you a lot of questions. I've been jumping around a lot. I want to know what you
lightning round.
That's right.
I'll try to be brief.
No. Well, just tell me what you would have us know. I mean, we're all here. Our group is called Awakening Together, and we're trying to figure out what that means, what this looks like, what to let go of, and what sage words of advice would you give to us?
Sit down and shut up.
Shoot, I was afraid you were going to say no.
No. There's a reason why the sages, all in one kind of words, or another, recommend that. What I would say is, think right now, what's the time of day when you can sit down and take, 10 or 15 minutes, something like that, like brushing your teeth. You don't think, when am I going to get around to brushing my teeth today? You've made it part of your schedule. Right. So what I would just say is try for a month. Find the time of day when you can always do it. Maybe I like to do it when I get up in the morning after I get out of the shower. Maybe for you it's going to be when you come home from work in the evening. Maybe it's going to be when you're riding to work or riding home from work on the train or in the Uber or whatever it is, where you sit and just let go into natural meditation and find someone who can guide you into the effortlessness of it. That's key. And if there isn't anyone necessarily available where you live, wherever you all are out there in TV land, go to my website, which is fearlessbook.net. There's a page there called Meditate Now, where you can stream guided meditation audio tracks completely free. I'm not selling anything here. Just really, and you do that a couple of times and you get, the effortlessness of it. Of course, how did I miss this? And then sit and do that every day for a little while. It's not going to be getting this concept or taking that attitude. I mean, there's some attitudes that are useful, and I deal with those in the book of, would it help? All this worrying doesn't help. Another great one that I got from years ago when I was practicing a martial art of Aikido. I have a chapter about this. Relax at the moment of contact. Okay, so when the person's coming at you, and this was an experience I had. I was practicing for this test where I had to repel multiple attackers, and every time one of the and what I was supposed to do is, as each attacker came in, I was supposed to turn and join their direction and use their momentum to help them to fly through the air. But I kept freezing up, and then they tackled me, and I was in the middle of this, getting frustrated, and my teacher happened to be halfway across the dojo, called out, "Dean, relax at the moment of contact." And what I found was then the next time a guy rushed in, instead of, I went, and dropped my shoulders, and my energy dropped to my middle, and then I pivoted in the same way I had before, but this time it worked. Like that was the missing ingredient. And I would just think of all the things that come at you in life. Whether it's the road rage, here's that cigarette, here's someone off, here I'm looking at the cigarette pack, and maybe my thing is, don't smoke it, I really want it. Instead, just relax at the moment of contact. And just again and again, drop it like a hot potato. Relax at the moment of contact. Keep doing that through the day. Keep dropping the thoughts, like we said before. Drop the thought for 5 minutes, the same way you do, whenever you're parallel parking or sleeping. Keep doing that. Keep punching holes in the grip that your old stories have on you. And then sit down every day, 5, 10, 15 minutes, do natural meditation. That's breathe through your feet, do the, sing
great.
descending fifths, and then there's there's a bunch of other tools there. Find a couple of tools that work for you, that you like. They'll all work for you, but the thing is, find ones that you like to do. Find ones that you find fun or intriguing somehow. You're not, I'm doing this stuff out of duty, out of being disciplined, and someday, even though it's a pain in the neck now, it'll make me blissful someday down the road. It doesn't work that way. Find something that's fun or interesting, a couple of tools, but do sit down in the meditation. That's the one thing. And sometimes you're sitting there in the meditation and it's not that fun. In general, you're just pulled into that blissful place. But sometimes you're squirming because all the old, the old traumas and things are getting cleared out. So, that's the time to, fasten your seatbelt and, keep your arms and legs inside the ride till it's come to a full stop.
Well, can we talk about that for just a minute?
Yeah.
What keeps coming up for me is the idea of, we talk about it in terms of purification.
Yes.
Yes, those persistent beliefs that won't seem to leave you alone. You can't seem to transcend or drop below, as you have described. What can you share with me your thoughts about purification?
Yeah, purification, which really comes in that deep, really, it's a physiological, it's not just the mind settling down, it's mind-body settling down. And that's important. The researchers who've studied what actually happens when we meditate, they describe it as a wakeful hypometabolic state. Hypometabolic meaning that the whole metabolism, all our systems settle down to a quieter style of functioning, but as they do in sleep, but we're awake in that quietness. Right? Everyone says, I want peace of mind, I want relaxation. Well, you get that for 6, 7, 8 hours every night, but you're conked out, so you don't experience it. But if you could be awake in that quietness, that's meditation.
Right.
So you experience it, and that's what makes the effortless practice work, because the mind is naturally drawn to anything enjoyable, so it just pulls us in. Okay, so in that deep metabolic settling down, the old traumas that, and as you say, you point that out very astutely, when you're trying to deal with it mentally, how am I going to let go of this old story? You're dealing with the story, and you can't let it go that way. That's not going to work. But what does work is you're settled down, and you're not even thinking about that story, probably. You're just settled down into that deep place, and then all of a sudden, like your muscles twitch, or your spine twitches, or you find yourself suddenly laugh and you're not sure why, or suddenly you're crying and you're not sure why, or you suddenly feel hot, or you suddenly feel cold, or you feel like you're spinning or floating, all these things. And what those are, all those sensations, they indicate that the traumas are being purified out of the nervous system, but you're experiencing them in a more purely, it's like you're experiencing them from the physical side. So, it might be the trauma from the time of this XYZ thing that happened in your childhood, and you're never even thinking about that. It's not like psychotherapy where you're, okay, I'm going to process this thing, but just at some point, someone brings it up and you go, oh yeah, that thing from my childhood. Yeah, I used to really stress about that. I don't know, well, I guess I stopped at some point. But this is why, one of the reasons why it's just really good to sit down and do that every day, not worry about what's happening. We don't know what's happening. We don't know. We're not in the driver's seat. Mother Nature's in the driver's seat. We're in the passenger seat, and we're wearing a blindfold. So just sit in, buckle up, and stay in your seat, and whatever happens. Sometimes it's blissful settling down. Sometimes you're perking away like Mr. Coffee. Whatever it is, and Maharshi, I used to go, and I know Rick Archer used to go also. We'd be on these long retreats together with a couple of hundred of our best friends with Maharshi. Spending 6 months on Mallorca or in Fuji, Italy, or somewhere in Switzerland, and there we'd be, meditating around the clock, hours and hours a day. So you're really just scooping deep and just really releasing deep stresses. So you'd be doing that all day, and then in the evening we'd convene in the meeting hall, and people would get up and say, "Maharshi, I've been weeping for 2 weeks. Maharshi, I feel like my head's exploding." Now, this doesn't normally happen when you just meditating 15 minutes a day at home. But when you do it, you're in the deep cooker like you are on these long retreats, which is one of the reasons you go on retreat. You go away in the woods, so you're not interacting with people. You can't, hurt yourself. So they'd be saying, "Maharshi, I feel like my head's exploding. Maharshi," and he'd listen to all this and he'd laugh. He'd go, "Ha, ha, ha, ha. Something good is happening."
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me. Did you have more?
No, just saying, you just got to put in the time. You just, get your butt on the chair or on the cushion and put in the time every day.
Yeah. So let me say again that Dean Sluyter's website is fearlessbook.net.
Yep.
And the book is Fearless, Living Beyond Fear, Anxiety, Anger, and Addiction. Dean's sharing the cover of that book with us right now. And we can buy that wherever quality books are sold.
Right. And you can read a chapter on my website. The chapter I have on my website is called "The Sweetest Dog in the World."
Oh, tell about that.
And that's really fun. I'll let people read that on the website, but just a little preview. If you've ever experienced, I saw a bumper sticker on a car once that said, "Lord, please make me the person my dog thinks I am." And my thing is to take anything in life that's good, that we think of as good, or we think of as bad, or we think of as challenging. How can we turn this into meditation? Because everything can, if we think meditation is the doorway into realizing that, it's all the one ocean of beingness, right? It's that non-dual reality. Everything's the doorway. Then that sweet dog with his sweet, lovely eyes, his total non-judgment, his great big doggy heart, that sweet dog, there should be a way to use him or her as the doorway into the infinite. So that's what I give in that chapter. And it can be anything. It can be, I've got a chapter about iPhone addiction. It's called Meditating with the iPhone Zero. Because, you see just people walking around this way all the time. For one thing, having your head at that 60-degree angle all the time promotes depression.
Oh.
Yeah. And for one thing, if you're going to be on your phone, at least hold it up. A little quick tip there. But then I give the practice there for when you find how to break iPhone addiction and how to flip it around and turn the experience of iPhone addiction into an opening, a door into the infinite. We can use anything. If we can use Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, if we use a pile of cow shit in the middle of the road, we can use anything.
Fair enough. Dean, thank you for your wisdom, your time, and your humor. Yes,
it's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
See you around.
All right. Namaste.
Namaste.